Hello, I'm Angelo Cavanaugh, the Executive Director of CAI, and I'd like to welcome all attendees and thank our partners, the Board of Directors, and CAI team for this program. A few housekeeping rules. Today, all participants will be muted. Please type your questions into the question box and be sure to state which panelist you would like the question directed to. If you need a certificate for manager credits, please email Jackie at Jacqueline, Jaclyn, at CAI-NJ.org. And just a note that you must be in attendance for the entire presentation to receive a certificate of completion. I would now like to welcome Brianna Walsh from the Membership Committee. Welcome, Brianna.
Thank you, Angela. Hi, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Brianna Walsh, and I'm the Vice President of CoolSys Energy Design. But most importantly, I'm the Chair of the CAI Membership Committee. I wanted to open up this Wednesday webinar to remind all of you to be sure to renew your memberships, or if you're new to the organization and not a member, to inquire about joining this great association. For our homeowner leaders, CAI members have access to CAI's ADR program, which is a cost-effective way to fulfill your association's legal obligation. Best community associations have the best boards. They're educated, knowledgeable, and prepared to lead their communities successfully, so help your board succeed. CAI New Jersey provides a robust library of content for community leaders as well as ongoing virtual learning opportunities, access to industry leaders in many areas such as accounting, engineering, insurance, and legal. Not to mention, you can have 3 to 15 board members and key volunteers added at one low price. Save the date for our Community Association Roundtable discussion on November 5th, where it's free for homeowner leaders and managers to attend. Speaking of our managers, you have access to print and online directories and leaders to help your communities navigate these unparalleled times. You earn continuing education credits at a free or discounted rate, and utilize our 2020 virtual trade show video catalog, which will help you navigate through all of the top professionals. And our business partners like myself, continued opportunities to build your brand, commitment to helping you with platforms such as online Zoom seminars, providing the necessary education to support your business, networking opportunities with other industry leaders, and virtual connection. And now our upcoming events. This Friday, we're having our HOA feud at 2 p.m., so register today and watch our managers and business partners battle out for bragging rights. The virtual expo has launched, so be sure to visit CAI-NJ.org to see the schedule of video releases and current video resources that are ready to be viewed. This is a resource that you can use well into 2021. As you know, every Wednesday at noon, you can join our educational program, CEU, for those who need accreditation. The LAC update will take place on October 27, 12 p.m. for all members to attend, and you can register on the website. If you have any questions regarding renewing a membership or becoming a member, feel free to reach out to myself and I will happily help you. Thank you so much and enjoy this great event.
Thank you, Brianna. Okay, today first up we have Paul Santoriello. Paul is the president of Taylor Management Company. With over 20 years managing community associations, Paul has also served on the board of directors for CAI-NJ and was the chapter president in 2011. He has won numerous awards in the chapter, including Distinguished Service Award in 2006. Today, Paul will be discussing board training. Welcome, Paul.
Angela, thank you very much, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of Wednesday webinars. Today, we're going to cover the topic of board member training, and I'll be putting up a PowerPoint presentation so you won't have to look at me throughout this whole thing, and I'll go through that with you. Just to give you an idea, what I've done is I've taken some sections of our board member training program that we do throughout the state, and I've melted it down to some, I think interesting topics. And obviously, if there are other things, we can hopefully address those in the Q&A section. Normally, we do this with a team of professionals also. We typically have accountants, attorneys, insurance agents, and other trade professionals that join us in this when we do our regional programs. But obviously in the environment that we're in these days, we're challenged to be able to do a lot of this. So we are, we're going to go through some board member training here. And as I said, please feel free to ask questions at the end, which Angela will present. With that, I will start.
Paul, Just if I may interrupt, can you put your PowerPoint into presentation mode, possibly?
Okay, is it, well, let me ask you a
Slideshow?
question. Is
Uh,
it's in slideshow?
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. You got it.
Okay, great. Thank you. So with that, as I said, thank you once again for allowing us to be part of the webinar Wednesday. Welcome everyone. This is some excerpts from our prior board member training programs that we've done throughout the state. And we scroll through, these are some of the leaders within our company that get very involved in the board member training. What we're going to do is we're going to go over a basic introduction, a little bit of an icebreaker, board training, and then I'm going to talk about policy governance, which is a tool that we teach boards to assist them in functioning efficiently and linking with management efficiently. So with that, let's get started. Our objective in board member training really is to provide fundamental knowledge that will benefit board members in meeting their obligations and fiduciary responsibilities, as well as developing a framework to achieve a cohesive management team. And that is a management team with Taylor Management and the board and committees and all the professionals. So typically what I do when I'm running these board member trainings, we're doing this in person. And one of the things that I like to do is I like to ask two questions. Why did you purchase a home in the community? And why did you volunteer to serve on the board? And one of the reasons why I do this is because it's very interesting when we go around. There are so many similarities as to why people purchased in the community. And we begin to identify those things that are really the valuable things that they see in the community and the reason why they purchased in the community. And really, board members' job is to maintain and improve the value of the community. But more importantly, why they volunteered to serve on the board. That's important also, and we often see a lot of similarities there. We're hopeful that they're looking to serve on the board to benefit the community as a whole and not be self-serving, and that's really what we typically see. And what we're trying to do when we're doing this with boards is really show how much they all do have in common, and that they can agree to disagree, but look to do that in an agreeable way, because a cohesive, well-functioning board is critical to the overall management and services we provide to the unit owners. I often say we, management and the board, are a team to serve the unit owners. We don't so much serve the board or committees as much as we serve the unit owners as a team with the board and committees. So it's critical that we try to create that cohesive process and really have everybody respect the board as a body and try to move forward in a positive way. That way we can spend a lot less time on conflict and a lot more time on being productive for the unit owners. So I'm going to go over just a few basics. Unfortunately, whenever I teach these classes, I do present it to a spectrum of people that are either new on the board, have been on for a period of time, or career veterans on the board. And we see it where we've seen people on the board up to 25 years and maybe more. So with that, I'll go over a few basic things. Community associations. When we look at community associations, we break them down into three formats. Planned communities, which really are separate interests, is typically single family homes with lots, and there really is not an enormous amount of common area and responsibilities of the association for the individual unit owner, and the budgets are relatively small. Those don't require an enormous amount of management work and board work. But the other two formats, cooperatives and condominiums, do. Cooperatives are a little bit different from condominiums in that they're a corporation and the corporation owns the structure. The individuals have shares with exclusive rights to occupy. We see less of those in the state of New Jersey. We're seeing even less and less of them and even seeing some conversions from cooperatives to condominiums. Condominiums, you own the space in a structure. You have shared ownership in the common, what we call undivided interest in the common area. And when we look at that common interest in communities, it's an interesting concept in that owners are members of the association. So when you purchase, you immediately become a member of an association. There are governing documents that create a mutual obligation. Those governing documents we'll talk a little bit about further with regard to master deeds, bylaws, and so on. And there are mandatory fees that are levied through an assessment on all unit owners. And once again, owners share a property interest. We don't divide the clubhouse amongst the 100 unit owners. So it is an undivided interest in that common area. And it actually is part of the overall value of your unit, which is actually reflected in your taxes, the overall value of your unit. So when we look at the governing documents, we're really looking at declaration or master deed, depending on fee simple or not. And that document really defines the unit, really defines that which is the unit, that which is the common area, the restricted or limited common area, and it really goes into the association's responsibility and the restrictions. That those are typically in the form of rules and regulations. We call them restrictive covenants. And then there is the bylaws, and really the bylaws are going to be driven by the are going to drive the association's operations, meaning meetings, election procedures, board member duties, things of that nature. And these documents are obviously something that you sign on to when you purchase your unit. And they can be modified in the form of an amendment, but that takes a significant effort in most cases. Master deed declarations, very challenging. Often a supermajority is needed to modify those. Bylaws under the new laws, the Radburn law that went into effect, I believe in 17, there is a process there that makes it a little bit easier. And I won't go into legal aspects, but there is a 10% negative threshold rule there. Consult with your attorney on some of those details. So when we look at boards, we look at their responsibility, and it's really fiduciary. You really have a fiduciary duty of loyalty to the association and due care. We look at it. Our responsibilities are also significant because we're here to support that fiduciary responsibility. And when they talk about that fiduciary, people are thinking most importantly about money, and that's really something very unique for community associations. That is, we are collecting other people's money and we are spending it. And that's a significant responsibility that we take very seriously, and boards have to take very seriously. That's why it's so important to be transparent, to communicate at a very high level, at a high frequency, so that people know what is going on and understand what is happening with the association and their money. So that's critical. It's interesting when we talk to board members, it's often we want to highlight to them that you're part of a leadership team of a corporation. Community associations are incorporated entities, and you're an elected official or leader. So that's why we often look at our community associations as quasi-governmental. We're like little miniature municipalities. And I think we do a pretty good job when you look at all the services and all the amenities and things that we do provide at a lot of our communities for, I think, a very efficient price. But you are an elected official, and you're responsible for protecting and increasing the values, both of the property and the community. And that's a critical point, because a lot of times boards think, well, I'm really here just to make sure the community is in nice shape, and the flowers are beautiful and the grass is cut and the snow is plowed and so on. And the reality is that there's a lot more to a community association. And when you start to talk to people about what they really value in the community, it is, of course, that it's a beautiful place to live, that they find it to be a great location. A lot of it has to do with that community aspect. How well do the residents, do the owners within the community get along, and how much do you enjoy being a part of this community? And there's a lot more to it than just the sticks and bricks, as we say. So that's an important part of it too, and that's part of the reason why we think board member training and also the policy governance are important things, because it helps to reduce conflict. And I think we all know that conflict does create a reduced enjoyment in any environment. So we're challenged with the same things that we see in the federal government, state government, and so on a much smaller basis. And that's because there's one consistency: it's humans. So with that being said, board member roles, we really look at some basic things, and that is enforcement of the documents. Obviously, one of the things you think of immediately is restrictive covenants, that's rules enforcement and so on. That's an important part of what we do. A big part also is fiscal policy, setting budgets, setting the reserve amount so that we have funds in the future for large capital expenditures. Obviously, that's going to set the assessment level, the maintenance fee level, and it's important for the board to maintain records of all of these financial activities. As I said, rules and regulations are important that we enforce. Appointing committees and working with those committees. We'll touch on that a little further as we move through. Obviously, a major issue is adequate insurance. Clearly, we need to be protecting the association against perils. So that's an important aspect, and you'll deal with your insurance professional to make sure that you have the proper insurance for your community association to meet your governing documents and then often to exceed that. We obviously get involved in hiring service providers. I often say that as a manager, we do nothing because we don't paint anything, we don't hammer any nails, we don't cut any lawns, but we do get involved in everything. We are the great communicators, but it's important for us to hire quality service providers. So that's often third-party service providers and landscapers and snow removal companies and so on. And then some communities, our larger communities, have staff of their own that we have to deal with. A big part of what we do is to inform. And there's a lot of communication that goes on. Obviously, meetings are a very important part of what we do, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on, the types of meetings. But it's an important part of the process to show the community that we are willing and desirable of sharing with the community what is going on and keeping them abreast as to how we're handling the community and handling the funds that they have provided. And then obviously the most important thing is, and especially when we talk about keeping records of the financials and so on, is that, you know, professional services, we can delegate the duties. That is, the board members can delegate the duties, but not the responsibility. So often you'll see that you're responsible, the treasurer is responsible to make sure that records are kept, but it doesn't say they have to keep them. And typically those things are asked or delegated of professionals, and typically the management company. So that's an important thing to understand. We take on those responsibilities, but the ultimate duty is the association board of directors. One of the things I will highlight is insurance. You do have a lot of responsibilities, but one of the things in the insurance is your D&O coverage, and that's something you want to talk to your insurance agent. That does provide you protection. So as a board member, you may be listening and saying, oh boy, it's a lot of responsibility. The board does have insurance coverage under the D&O coverage, and also in the governing documents is indemnification clauses within that document to protect board members also. So make yourself aware of that. Talk to your attorney with regard to that. Qualities that we look for in board members, we want to have individuals that have strong character, strong integrity, calm judgment, really a very important aspect of being a board member. You're going to be challenged a lot. You're going to be possibly aggressively challenged at times. And you really need to have calm judgment. You need to stay above the fray to some extent. And that's really an important aspect, because when you begin to wrestle and you begin to create greater conflict with the individual unit owners, you do begin to show some element of concern to them that maybe you're not being transparent or being professional. So that's important for us as management. It's important for the board. It's important for all of us in the leadership position, committees and so on. The big issue is that is important is that willingness to serve. I mean, you really are here to serve the unit owners, and you have to keep that perspective in mind. Unit owners aren't always going to act appropriately. They may not ask things in an appropriate manner. They may be demanding and unrealistic. There's a lot of things that are going to happen, but you need to understand that you're there to serve them, and you need to be patient and go through that process. Often it's difficult. We recognize that board members and management do an enormous amount of work behind the scenes that nobody sees, and you know, it's difficult to do that and not get credit for it and be challenged. But that is important as far as having that willingness to serve. And the way that you let them know all the things that you're doing is by communicating. timely, effectively, and sharing with them everything. That does create a great sense of transparency, communication. And you need to be committed to the best interests of the community as a whole, not to your own personal interests. And last but not least is strong people skills. And not every board member is going to have that, but it's important to have certain individuals that have strong people skills. Clearly, the manager needs to have strong people skills. That's important. So when we look at it, we look at the management and the board as a team. We're here to serve the unit owners. We clearly want to be creating much more value than just the sticks and bricks. And as I said, we do nothing, but we are the great communicator between the board and the service providers, the board and the unit owners, the board and the state and municipal government, the board and the professionals, attorneys, engineers, accountants. We're the great communicators. So one of the things that really helps us work well together in Unity is policy governance. And we're going to go over that a little bit about how management and the board can set policy so that we function efficiently. And I'll go into that, as I said, a little bit more. Expectations, it's critical to define expectations. Not only expectations of the unit owners, to have them have realistic expectations and through communication, modifying those expectations possibly, but also for the board, management, and all the professionals to understand the expectations they have of each other. And once again, communication creates transparency. Just to touch on a couple of things really quickly, types of meetings. We have annual meetings, which really are meetings of the membership. We have open board meetings. The Open Meetings Act creates that requirement. And of course, touch base with your attorney on this if you have any questions in detail. But obviously you need to take minutes of those meetings. Also, you have executive meetings. Executive meetings are really for 4 areas of concern, in that you would not want to have them be in the open meeting. And one is constitute an unwarranted invasion of an individual's privacy. 2 would be pending or anticipated litigation. 3 would be attorney-client privilege. And 4 would be matters involving employment. So one of those 4 would drive you to an executive meeting, which would be in private with the board and typically management and or professionals. So that would drive you to an executive meeting. And then workshops, still currently workshops do not have to be done in open, but that's where a lot of the work is done. But once again, you must make sure that you approve everything in the open session and ratify in the open session. The Open Meetings Act, touch base with your attorney on that to make sure that you're complying with it. 2 major things though: agenda, critical to have, and if you can distribute prior to the meeting, it is important to do so. And also minutes. Minutes really are often used incorrectly. They often try to have a transcript of the meeting. That's not what minutes are. They're often used as a management tool. That is not what minutes are for, where you list out all the action items. Minutes are truly for when the meeting starts, who's present, quorum achieved, motions made, documents accepted, and typically setting up the next meeting and adjournment. There's a lot of information out there on minutes, but I see very, very often most associations put entirely too much in their minutes, and that has a real liability concern. One of the things that you do want to do is take a look at the Radburn Act of 2017, but more importantly, the amendments there too, which came out this year and went into effect this year, which really impact annual elections. Make sure you touch base with your attorney on that so that you're following those closely. Just quickly on committees, they're very, very helpful. They're there to assist the board with information and recommendations. They help by broadening community input. They share responsibility and show transparency. Great thing to do is invite heads of committees to speak at open board meetings. People get a sense of transparency when more people are taking responsibility and it isn't all held by one person or a small group of board members. And they are a source of future boards. Committees are really critical that you set them up properly, that you have the authority and the scope of responsibility set in the beginning, and that you communicate that when you're trying to recruit. People don't want to join committees when they don't know what the committee's about. So the more you can define what it is, the better chance you have for participation. But they're really there to serve the board. And define the membership, how many people you think is sufficient on committees. Talk about how they're going to link to the board. That's critical to make that efficient. And talk about the terms and once again the relationship with the board, and give them adequate authority but understand it's the board that makes decisions, and they're really there to serve you. And make sure you respectfully consider the recommendations. You have a number of recommendations made and not serious consideration is given, you'll lose the board's efforts, and that's not a good thing. And recognize them in public. That's a really critical piece, to recognize them in public. It's helpful, and it gives them great value and appreciation. And really, that's predominantly why we see the volunteers we do in the community. They do appreciate being recognized for their efforts. And when you're working with your experts, big thing to do, not only with management, really all your professionals, is define the need, go through the selection process, define the expectations, and that's typically in the form of the contract, and then determine how you're going to link and monitor and communicate with those professionals. And that includes us. So that leads me to the last topic I want to touch on. Unfortunately, we're having to go through a lot of material fairly quickly, but we do come out and do this on a one-to-one basis with our boards, often with new board members. So we're always willing to come out and do that. But policy governance, I want to introduce that to you if you haven't seen it before. The Carver model of policy governance is a great model for associations to use. You can find that on the website at carvergovernance.com, but it's really about reinventing your boards. And there's a step-by-step guide. There's a number of publications that I've read and I've been a part of and taken classes on. It's a very helpful tool. But really, essentially, what policy governance is the board is setting policy on how they're going to communicate, how they're going to handle their meetings, how they're going to handle themselves outside of meetings, be it with emails or communication and so on. And it's going to lay out to each one of the board members what their limitations are, meaning an example may be a board member cannot just walk up to the landscaper and say, hey, I want you to put in flowers in this one section, right? Or there may be limitations of dollars or interaction with other professionals. So you'll set up limitations that you will want to set with the board. You'll then look to determine how you're going to link with management. That's a critical piece because you want to be clear on who links to management for what, whether it's one board member for everything, or typically we see one board member, the president, for most things, and then others may link. For example, financials would be the treasurer. Somebody may be responsible for interfacing with legal, but you're typically looking to have defined exactly who links to management for what issues, so that management knows who to take direction from, and they know the limitations that the board members have on their ability to make decisions. And you want to do the same thing essentially for committees. Then what you do is you want to set limitations on the manager, be it dollar amounts, be it initiatives they can take on without consulting with the board. And you then want to, once you've created this format, you want to then create a way to monitor it. Typically, we do that through our monthly board packages, our weekly updates, but that's important to do. What we're trying to do with policy governance is create a cohesive board that works well together, understands the ground rules, understands their limitations. They know who links with management for what. They know the limitations on management, and they then can also monitor that the ends that they're looking to achieve are accomplished. It frees up management significantly to work within a certain parameter without having to touch base with the board all the time, and it allows board members to work more independently up to a limit, and it allows us to serve ultimately the unit owners, which it's all about, at a much higher level and a much more efficient level. It really is truly a great tool. So don't really have time to go over examples, and this is a whole day class that I put on for this, so we're just touching on it. But as I've indicated, more than happy if anybody wants to reach out to me to talk more about it with the boards. But the results are agreed upon rule book. It reduces conflict. Comfortable to say, as we say, be comfortable, disagreeing, but do it in an agreeable manner. It defines the direction. It gets the desired results you want, it empowers everybody. It allows you to measure performance through the monitoring tools, and it really does provide a greater service to the community as a whole. And for future board members, it creates a great roadmap for them to use. With that, I will close out and say Thank you very much. Hopefully it's back to me. I try to do that as quickly as possible. Thank you very much. And I'll hand it back to Angela at this point in time.
Thank you, Paul. That was fantastic. We do have a few questions. The first one, can you distinguish between the difference between an executive meeting and a workshop?
Sure. So with a workshop, workshops are typically meetings that don't have to be open to the public. It's where the board will do a lot of things with regard to planning and a lot of the work related to getting to the point where they can make decisions. It may be reviewing contracts or RFPs, specifications. It may be talking about challenges that they have. But that's typically not something that's a formal meeting that you must open to the public. An executive session really is an aspect of the open board meeting that you go into executive session and nobody is there except for the board of directors and invited guests, typically the manager, maybe an attorney, and so on. And as I said, it really covers 4 areas. And you do want to take minutes of this, although you do not need to make them available to the community until those minutes are no longer constitute an unwarranted invasion of individual privacy. It involves pending or anticipated litigation. It involves any attorney-client privilege information or matters that involve employment. So those are the 4 things that really differentiate and would cause you to have to move into an executive session.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Does the state of New Jersey require board members to be certified, registered, and or receive any kind of training?
So no, I'll even go further to tell you that the state of New Jersey doesn't require managers to be licensed or certified or management companies. CAI does an amazing job of supplementing there in that they have training programs and certification programs. Example, I am a PCAM, Professional Community Association Manager, highest designation you can get within CAI. Also, our company is a AAMC company, an accredited association management company within CAI. So those are things to look for, but unfortunately, the professional organizations have had to step in to try to create some credibility in the industry because the state has no licensing, although we have tried to get that in the state for a long time, but it's a challenge in this state.
I have another question. Are the existing bylaws or updated bylaws the rules to be upheld by the manager? Do you want me to reread that?
I'm not clear on that,
Are
but
the existing bylaws or updated bylaws the rules to be upheld by the manager? That's how it's reading.
So sure. So I'll try to answer that in a way that hopefully is going to address what the intention was. So your rules and regulations, typically those are originally found in what we call the restrictive covenants in the master deed. You can do furtherances of those rules, i.e. You can add certain aspects to the rule, but you can't materially modify them. In other words, let's say dogs are allowed and you're going to decide dogs are not allowed in the community. That would require an amendment of those documents. And that would have to be done typically through a supermajority. You have to look at your governing documents to see that. Those rules and regulations are the responsibility of the board of directors. Remember, once again, can't pass off the responsibility, can pass off the duties. So the board of directors has a responsibility with regard to those rules and regulations. And I recommend very much so to look at those rules and regulations, make sure that you're comfortable with them, make sure that those are ones that you can enforce, are enforceable, and that you find valuable to the community. And then, obviously take a look at the environment you're in. I will tell you right now with COVID, be very, very careful. When we're not providing a lot of times our clubhouses, we're not providing pools, we're not providing gyms, we're not providing a lot of things. If we're going to run around and enforce, people's ducks on their front lawn or something like that, plastic ducks, I think we might find ourselves with some significant pushback because sadly and understandably, everybody is on edge right now. So yes, the association does have that responsibility, but it's like speeding. We don't catch every police don't catch every speeder. We won't catch every rule that is broken. But with enforcement, there's a whole process that you have to go through. There's also an ADR process, alternative dispute resolution process. So it's a fairly involved thing, but start with rules that you care about and are important to the community, and then work with your professionals on how best to enforce them fairly and evenly.
Thank you, Paul. There are other questions coming in. If we have time, we'll address those at the end.
Okay.
But thank you for now. And now we're going to turn over to Jessica. Jessica Long has been, Hi, Jess.
Hi.
Jessica Long has been with Quality First for 8 years, working with property managers and associations across the tri-state area. Quality First specializes in both concrete replacement and concrete lifting to come up with the best solutions to repair trip hazards. Jessica will be discussing concrete lifting and leveling. Welcome, Jessica.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for having me. So yeah, just like Angelo said, I'm going to go through pretty much what causes the concrete itself to settle. And one of the ways that we address it that's really successful, comes with a warranty, and also helps our community save a lot of money. The first thing I want to touch on is the causes of concrete settlement and movement. So there can be tons of different causes out there, but the three main ones that we see are issues with the soil, whether it's settlement, expanding, contracting with wet and dry seasons, trees lifting up the slabs, or drainage issues. These are the ones that we most commonly see in communities. Like I said, there's tons of different things out there that can cause these issues, but these are the ones I'm going to touch on today. So with that being said, soils first. Whenever it's really wet or really dry, soils expand and they contract with that added moisture and the reduction of moisture, which can cause, again, depending on if it's clay soils, depending on if it's sandy soils, you can get that cracking that you're seeing in the middle picture. You can also get those muddy areas, and that's what can cause the slab to drop and have that water build up like you're seeing over on the side. Another example is trees. They're a pain. 9 times out of 10, when a community is getting built, the builder will go in and the last thing that they do is throw in the trees, and it might not be the appropriate tree or there might not be enough space, but irregardless, years down the road, it can cause those slabs to lift. Another one is drainage. Oftentimes, whether it's behind a catch basin, near a leader or anything like that, or if there is no drainage in the area, the weight of the slabs and the movement on the slabs can often cause those slabs to drop down and create a trip hazard. A lot of the time we will see them behind catch basins, whether the basin wasn't originally installed properly, has been maintained, or sometimes, again, when developers come in, you'll have one contractor doing the drainage in the rear, and you'll have another contractor doing the road and the catch basin, and that connection was never properly made, causing a gap where water and soils can drop in, dropping those slabs and causing them to settle, creating a trip hazard. Here's another example of the drainage. A lot of the time, and it depends on the community. Some communities, the leaders or the homeowner's responsibility. In some communities, there are the associations, which could make it a tricky item. But a lot of the time, those leaders or those sump pump discharge lines drop out right next to those sidewalks, causing those soils to wash out, causing erosion, and then again, causing those slabs to settle. One of the biggest questions we're asked is, when is it a trip hazard? And there's really 3 or 4 different answers to that, right? The first one is what the DCA considers to be a trip hazard. So I'm sure we all know about the DCA state inspections, where they come in and they take a look at our associations and our communities, and they go through and they see everything that needs work needs to be addressed for the safety of the community. So the DCA may have one definition of a trip hazard. If someone actually trips and falls, the insurance company could have another height definition of the trip hazard. Depending on the town or city, they can also have another version of a trip hazard. So what most times I tell my communities, if a child, if a baby in a carriage, if your grandmother, your mother, a family member could trip on it, whether you're running, your kids are playing, or shuffling of the feet, it's a trip hazard. We never want to take that risk and say, you know what, it's not that bad yet. Because it could be bad to somebody, depending on what type of shoe wear you're wearing, depending on what you're doing, depending on how the sidewalk's being used. 3 of the main areas I want to touch on are steps, sidewalk to curb, and sidewalk to sidewalk. The first thing is sidewalk to sidewalk, which is probably what everybody sees mostly when you're walking down the main street, whether you're walking your dog, whether you're just going on your daily stroll. This is the first trip hazard that most people notice right away, and it's when the slab is settled and dropped away from the other, causing a little lift between the two. One that's, again, seen, but sometimes it's missed, is with steps. So if you look on the photo on the left, or at least my left, you'll see with the little pink X on it, you'll see that the steps drop down from that front stoop. Again, this is due to the soils and due to erosion and due to some drainage, but those steps did drop down. Now, in this case, these stairs would be a trip hazard because one, it's not to code, and two, you've created a small lip that the foot can get caught on before reaching that porch. The photo on the right, or at least my right, is a set of steps where from far away, you can't tell that it's a trip hazard, but when you get up close, you have that 10 inches, which puts it out of code and actually creates a higher step up that people have to step, which makes it a trip hazard as well. And the last one that most commonly is missed because you don't think to look at your curb when you're looking at your sidewalk is the sidewalk to curb. Now, if you look at the photo in the middle, what you'll see is the parking spots that go straight up. And 9 times out of 10, when a resident or a homeowner comes in and parks in those slabs, they're not going to walk to the ends of the sidewalk and look for a ramp, which are there. But most of the time, they're going to go straight from their car to the front door. And when they leave their unit, they're going to walk straight from the unit over that curb and down onto the driveway. Now, again, the soils in the area, drainage, things like that can cause those slabs to drop. And a very common trip hazard that we see are these sidewalks to this curb. Now, one of the things you might have noticed in all the pictures that I was showing you was that the concrete actually wasn't in bad condition. It wasn't cracked. It wasn't damaged from salt or from age. There wasn't a lot of spalling on it. So it looked great. So one of the most common questions that we're asked is there's nothing wrong with it, but it dropped. Like, what can we do? Now, oh, that started a little ahead of me. Let me go back there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a quick video, just how poly-level works and how the slab lifting works. And then I'm going to touch on a little bit of how the installation is, what the material is, and how it can affect your communities. If I can get it slide. There we go. So here you'll see the material getting injected under the slabs. And one of the biggest things we say is it's non-invasive. It's a very quick installation. A hole gets drilled about the size of a dime and the material is ejected underneath. In terms of quick installation time, it takes about 10 to 15 minutes and you don't have to be off of the slabs. And this application also allows our technicians to lift the slab accurately to exactly the point in which it needs to be without overlifting the area, creating another trip hazard. It's also a structural foam. There's different strengths, whether it be sidewalks, roadways, driveways, or even the foundation of a home, whether it's slab on grade. So some of the lifting benefits are, again, we're working with communities and we understand that every community has a budget and there's a lot of repairs that have to be done. And sidewalks are one of them because trip hazards are something that we see day to day. Again, whether we're walking our dog, just walking through the community, going to our car, just going about our daily life. The benefits of concrete lifting is that it's cheaper than replacement. You also have a longer warranty. Concrete replacement typically comes with a 1-year warranty. Concrete lifting comes with a 5-year warranty. Because we're not just addressing the issue with the concrete, we're also addressing the source of the problem, which is the soils or the drainage issue that's happening below the slab. Timing wise, the installation can be quick. If it's a couple slabs, it could be a half hour to an hour. Even if it's larger areas, typically our installs are completed within 1 day and there's no downtime. It doesn't have to be coned off. Residents don't have to stay off the area. After 10, 15 minutes of our crews being there, you can walk on the concrete. If it's a driveway, you can drive on the concrete. And there's no wet areas that you have to worry about or avoid. It's a clean installation. It's a green material, which basically it's environmentally friendly. How can that be and there be a warranty? The only thing that can break down the lifting material and the structural foam and the poly level is the sun, which conveniently isn't underneath the slabs, which is why it lasts. You don't have to worry about color differences from slab to slab, which is another question that we get whenever we have to do replacement. And the material itself is waterproof. So you're rarely ever going back and readdressing the same issues. And that's pretty much all I have on that one. Am I back to you? Okay, did I do it? Oh, I don't think I could hear you. Oh, there we go.
No, I had muted myself. Sorry about that. All right, sorry about that. Yes, we have a few questions for you. Thank you, Jess. That was very
Sure.
informative. First question, is there a warranty? I think you may have addressed this, but is there a warranty on poly-level slab lifting? Did you already mention that?
I think I did, but there is a 5-year warranty on poly-level slab lifting. Now, as I said in the PowerPoint, the material does not break down unless it's exposed to sunlight, which isn't underneath the concrete. So the material will essentially be there forever. It's not harmful to the area, but the reason we give it a 5-year warranty is because if the drainage and the soils around the sidewalk or concrete or slab are not maintained properly, it can have some movement, but it's very easy to adjust the material with a simple maintenance as opposed to a reinstallation or replacement.
Okay, and there's one more question. How long does the installation take, and when can the area address be used again? Again, I believe you answered that.
So yeah, we pretty much hit that. But an installation, if it's a few slabs in a sidewalk area, it could be a half hour to 2 hours. If you're dealing with something like around the pool deck where the concrete is dropped from the coping, it could be a day installation, but it can also be used for void fill and those kind of things. So it really depends. But the biggest thing I would say is as soon as we're done, we pull the guns out and we clean the area. You're able to walk right on it.
One more question. What's the pricing like on the foam? How expensive is it?
So what we do, and this is a great question, like everything else, it's scaled. So if you were to do 100 square feet versus 1,000 square feet, you're going to get different pricing because the material's there, the equipment's there, there's no mobilization or anything like that. The average that we give is the concrete lifting is anywhere from 40 to 50% cheaper than concrete replacement. So we also understand that in larger projects where there is some concrete that's cracked, it does have to be replaced, but it's a benefit because the ones that aren't damaged and aren't cracked, if we could lift as many as possible, it allows that budget to expand to address more areas than it would have if you were just replacing them by, like I said, saving around 40 to 50% of whatever the replacement cost per slab would be.
Thank you. Those are all the questions. Thank you both. If any of the attendees today have any other questions, please email me. I'll definitely put you in touch with both presenters. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.